I realized when I moved to Los Angeles and saw the big homes and saw, kind of the lifestyle that people were living. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to get there making $100,000 per year, even with a combined household income of pretty much $200,000 per year. I was looking at the expenses versus the income, and I was like, it's going to be a long, long time for me to be able to afford a multi-million-dollar home and, be on the beach whenever I want and things of that nature. So that led me to really diving into the world of entrepreneurship. I was a class clown or just somebody who liked to have a good time. But in the actual sanctuary, in the actual church, my parents were teaching, obviously, of course, the good news, the gospel, and about Jesus and all of those things. But they were also teaching financial literacy. What my parents would also help and counsel on was being the most valuable you can be in the marketplace. So that would be making sure that you were prepared for job interviews or promotions. Those are the type of things that were instilled in the church to not only better the individual, but overall grow God's storehouse. And so being able to provide access to individuals who teach family financial literacy so that everybody has that level of understanding and can use it to their advantage. So 100%, coming from the church background, but specifically the way that my parents ran their church, was really instrumental in me being able to build the community that we built.
I think this episode has become the cusp of luxury blending with spirituality with your kind of background and the kind of work that you're doing. Welcome to Luxury Unplugged. I'm Neeti Keswani, your host, and this is where luxury meets spirituality. Now, in this interview series, we are exploring what it truly means to live a life of purpose, elegance, and inner abundance. But why leave the external environment too? So through our inspiring stories and conscious entrepreneurship, in each episode, we are helping you unplug from the noise and reconnect with the essence of who you really are. Let's dive in and redefine luxury from the inside out. Today, we are exploring an interesting topic that is at the intersection of technology and wealth building. Our guest, Mr. Aaron Richards, is someone who's truly ahead of the curve. He's the founder of ATN. Now, with a passion for innovation and hands-on approach to leadership, he's building a career that's helping businesses not just grow but scale with precision. So, if you are a seasoned investor, a curious entrepreneur, then this is going to be the Game Changer podcast for you. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Great introduction. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So nice to have you, Aaron. And we are having so many questions around the interesting things that you are doing in your career.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it started back in 2019. So, that was something that I realized when I moved to Los Angeles and saw the big homes and saw, kind of the lifestyle that people were living. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to get there making $100,000 per year, even with a combined household income of pretty much $200,000 per year. I was looking at the expenses versus the income, and I was like, it's going to be a long, long time for me to be able to afford a multi-million-dollar home and, be on the beach whenever I want and things of that nature. So that led me to really diving into the world of entrepreneurship, and then also in the world of investing, which is a completely different world than, a 9-to-5 employee or someone who is stuck in the rat race. The worlds are completely different. So I just wanted to figure it out for myself. It didn't come without my struggles, and there are still challenges that I face today. But fast forward 6 years later, I'm very happy with the trajectory that I've been on.
Very nice. nice, very interesting, in fact, because you also talk about a steady, stable income that you've been able to build out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, those are two great questions. So the first thing, I'll start with the second one. How do you go about it? Well, the first thing that you have to do is actually have an investable income, right? Or the ability to have capital to risk with an investment. And so for people that are, 18 and young individuals that are trying to start a career, figure out what they want to do in life, focus on getting a high income skill set. So for me, I have, this theory. It's called the three acquisitions of wealth. The first is, acquire knowledge. Then you want to acquire capital, and then you want to use that capital to acquire assets. And then you can kind of rinse, wash, and repeat. The first thing is the knowledge piece. That goes into formal education, self-education, developing skill sets, understanding how you can use those skill sets to earn you money. And so, again, for the younger individuals that are looking to be able to invest, well, you need to start with having capital to invest. And I wouldn't double leverage and, I could apply for this $10,000 credit card, or I can get this, $30,000 business loan. And then I'm going to use that to get into algorithmic trading or, investing or things like that. That's high risk. That's like, taking something that's medium to high risk and like just exponentially like taking on that risk. Cause if it fails, then gosh, that's definitely really a hard place to be in with the liabilities that you have, probably hits to credits and all of those type of things. So starting with a high income skill set is first and foremost. So for the people, if you fast forward to someone who's already done that, and whether you're late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and on, and you already have a career, you already have a high income skill set, you're just stuck in the time for dollars trap. You are someone like myself, about 7+ years ago, and you're looking for a way out of the rat race. Well, you just want to, at that point, minimize your Okay. Yeah. So, for those that are, maybe 18 to 30 and they're still trying to figure out their career and figure out how they can earn a high amount of income so they do have investable capital, then the first thing you want to focus on is the actual knowledge piece and closing that skill gap to where you have the ability to use that's going to be the best place to start. Now, for those who are already there, you may be 30, 50, 70 years old, you're still in your working age. Hopefully you're not 70 years old and still working, but you're still in your working ages and you actually earn a pretty high income. Well, what you want to do at that point, or what you would consider at that point, is how is the makeup of your portfolio? Do you just have your investments in, things that are going to make 5 to 10% annually? Or do you have a sliver of your portfolio that is what's called alternative investments? Those can be precious metals, those could be collectibles, that could be, like commodities or things of that nature. There could be other businesses. And then also that could be, trading. Just several years ago, so back in like the late 90s, it became popularized for like quantum computing and just using high frequency trading, but that was mainly for Wall Street. But as far as, in the 2010s and kind of going closer to 2020, that started to become more. But if you still don't really have like a license, or you don't have like, the ability to handle that much speed and much power, then you could hurt yourself. So you don't want to just go at it alone. That's not really advisable. You want to have professionals that you're working with in order to help you and help that algorithm get the most out of it. And that's where, our company comes in, where, we have trading teams that we use to leverage their expertise and give our clients the best chance of success.
Is that something like a trend these days?
Well, it's a trend for them to do it themselves. They're the ones who are more so the type that will either use, prop firms, which is, basically another way of saying using other people's money. You're not really actually using your own capital to trade. The problem with prop firms that I've seen personally, is that they don't actually pay out. Like 99% of them don't actually pay out. You could do your best. And, I remember like 3 years ago, I really tried prop trading, and we used an algorithm. I had a partner that was using the algorithm, passed the challenge. It was great. Yes, we got funded $200,000, and then we're trading for 30 days, and you're supposed to get a payout of it's like $4,500. And it was like, we submitted for the payout, and they sent us back an email that said, we cannot pay out because there's a breach of contract and you did not follow the terms and conditions and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we did follow the terms and we did do exactly what we're supposed to do. How come you're not giving us the money? Well, lo and behold, that's the game, right? They literally these prop firms make their money off of, someone who's typically younger or doesn't actually have capital, by sending, their fee to actually try to pass a challenge. So that the challenges can be like $500 to $2,000. And these prop firms earn their money because of, people paying for challenges, and most of them fail. But when someone actually passes, and then they actually have to pay out because they've been a successful trader, that's when they don't actually pay out. So it is a trend for the younger generation to do prop firm trading, or to try to trade themselves, typically, with what they have, which is, maybe a couple of $1,000s. But as far as the 18 to 30-year-olds, that's not necessarily our crowd at the ATN community that we have. Most of our clients, our average age is like 45 years old. So they could be 30, they could be 50, they could be a little older. And so the trend for those individuals that we serve is they want to take advantage of AI. They want to take advantage of advanced technology. The last thing that our clients want is to, spend more hours sitting in front of a screen and not with their family. And so that's kind of the biggest difference there.
Right. So in terms of the audience and the kind of people that you are working along with, these are the people who are high income individuals, right? High net worth. And they sort of
high income. I don't want to interrupt you, but high income, not necessarily high net worth. We're taking what's usually reserved for the top 1%, and we're allowing for access to the top 5 and 10%, which is really helpful.
So what kind of risk are we looking at if we go on an independent basis versus somebody like you? What is the kind of capacity that happens with you whenever we are going with you? What kind of risk mitigation happens in that case?
Well, it's easier to use an analogy, right? So if you want to get from one destination to the next, you could walk. That would probably, depending on how far it is, it'd probably take a little while. Let's say you're trying to go from New York to Miami. Mm-hmm. You could walk there. That'll take a really long time, right? That's like trying to save your way to wealth. You could take a car there. That's a little bit faster. That's like trying to invest in, some things that are putting 5 to 10% annual returns. That's kind of that route. Or you could fly there. It's going to be a good amount faster, but of course, you have to have either a driver's license in order to show, that you are able to fly, whether a driver's license or a passport, or it's more expensive, or, there's more restrictions and things like that. Those are things that you have to consider when you're flying somewhere, but it's going to get you there faster. And so with what we do is, instead of you wanting to fly and someone giving you access to fly a plane by yourself, we actually give you access to something like, what we consider Delta Airlines or American Airlines, or take your pick. And now you are sitting in first class and you're getting from New York to Miami very comfortably. And that's something that we provide, right? You're not the one who's a pilot. You don't have to, go through years and years of training and, potentially simulations that are crashing and things like that. You don't have to go through all of those things that the pilots that we use in this example had to go through in order to still have the same benefit of getting to your destination faster. So for what we do, we are not the trading team. ATN is not the trading team. We're the go-between. We're the consultants, right? We provide a level of access. So you can consider us in a way like, we're the airline, right? The airline is not the pilot. The airline is the company. And so we have pilots that we consult with or that contract with us in order to get you from destination to destination. So it's allowing for the professionals to do most of the work while you are able to just sit back and enjoy the ride.
So is it coming with, like, let's say you invest this particular amount of money with us and we are going to be guaranteeing a certain kind of a thing, or are we talking about on a long-term basis that this is how we are going to suggest and you will make the final decision? How do you really work?
Yeah, great question. So whenever anyone throws out the word guarantee, I kind of cringe and shudder a little bit, because no, you're asking great questions, and that's what I just want to make it known to everybody in your audience that may be listening here is. Nothing in life is guaranteed except for, I can be grim and just say death and taxes, right? It's those are guaranteed, right? You're going to die someday and you are going to absolutely have to pay your fair share in taxes. And so those are the things that are guaranteed. In finance and in investing, there's nothing that's guaranteed. Let me think, right? Let me think. There are some insurance companies that do offer guaranteed minimums. There's some other small things that, but those are the ones when there's a guarantee, like an annuity or something along those lines, it's going to be 5% or like I mentioned, no more than 10% for the year. So for us, no, we don't offer guarantees because that's unethical and that's not how life actually works. But what we do offer is, actual results. We offer the ability to look at what has been the track record and what's been the performance over time. And of course, past results don't dictate future results, but you can take a look at, for our YouTube channel, it's Aaron Richards _ or it's at ATN Unlimited. Actually, it's ATN Unlimited _ That's the YouTube channel. And you can look at all the testimonials that we have, the case studies that we have, and kind of the results that we've been able to help our clients to see, to make an informed decision based off of if it could work for you. But we've had a pretty successful go at it in the last few years.
Right. So Aaron, let's get to some basics over here. When we talk about your online income, so what are some of the key habits or routines that might help other people as well to help scale their online income in this fashion?
Yeah, as I mentioned, right, the first thing that has to happen is, the ability to have income or capital to invest. And you call that risk capital, right? Nobody wants to lose it, but you can afford to lose it and not, be, asking your parents to live with them if they're still with us, or, having to, take out a second mortgage or something like that to survive. You want to have the ability to actually invest properly. And so for me, making more than $25,000 per month passively, it just is a matter of how much how much capital I have allocated into my funds or into my brokerage account. So, what we've seen historically has been kind of around between 3 and 5+%, or on a monthly basis, or more importantly, looking at on a yearly basis, between 30 and 50 or so 0% on a yearly basis. And now you can kind of do the math of what that looks like. And, the more capital that you have available to put in, then, those numbers get inflated as far as how much you're earning on a monthly basis. But it just matters what someone is able to start with, what their risk capital looks like, and things of that nature. So I would just advise someone to have capital available that is not something that they will need in the very near future, that it's similar to how you would think of, putting capital for retirement or something along those lines. It's something that, is for the future you, and not for, we're not talking about tomorrow you, we're talking about maybe several months to a few years down the line.
Right. So in terms of that, my question would be about the kind of mistakes people generally make. What sort of mistakes do they really, get into, and how can they really come out of it, or not get into it at all?
Yeah, great question. So, trusting the wrong people is big. There's a lot of people out there that have not the best interest of their clients or the people that they're looking to serve. For me growing up, I'll just kind of go into a bit of the backstory, right? How I was raised was in a Christian household. We had a lot of values that was like do unto those as you would like to be done unto you. The golden rule, those type of things, were extremely important. But of course they can be told to you, but you still have to embody them if that's what you really respect or value. And so I just, grew up with those values, and I had to learn for myself what it meant to, love your neighbor, and what it meant to be a good steward, and all of those different things. And so for me on that end, it's, just, is the person that you're working with transparent? Are they honest? What's their track record? Are they available? Can you speak to them? That's kind of on the piece of like, who are you going to work with? And so for most people that may be listening that have tried other things, they've maybe trusted the wrong person. And that's a big mistake. I used to work with a company that did Amazon automation. I had no idea about, different businesses that could help you to generate income without you having to be the main person to operate it. And with that, I was like mind blown. This was like 2020. I was like, wait, you could have an Amazon shop, and you can, have someone from the Philippines or India or whatever run it for you, and you can make profit. That sounds amazing. But the whole like aspect of when you start something and you have the expectations that it's going to be something, well, your expectations are up here and the delivery is all the way down here. That's going to be a majorly disappointing situation. So some intentions for people that, advertise on the internet, or you may hear word of mouth, some of their intentions are good. They just are not able to perform to the standard or to the expectations that you have. And then there's other people that literally have no intention of performing. And those are the types of situations that can really hurt families. Myself, I've experienced it. I lost $60,000+ in Amazon. I've lost, tens of thousands of dollars in Airbnb automation opportunities, tens of thousands of dollars in Shopify automation. I went into trucking, and that did not work out as well. So I've experienced those things. And I remember as well, there was someone that ended up working, being a client of ATN, and he actually invested into a trucking automation program. He spent $150,000 on a trucking program that was supposed to give him a truck and have these already pre-built routes for him, and it was supposed to make $5,000 to $10,000 per month. And after about 4 or 5 months, he was making an average of $0 per month. Why was it an average, right? Well, he would make 1 month, it would be negative $1,000. He actually owe money. And the next month it would be like $100 or a couple $100, but way far off than the expectation. Not only do you have trust for the individual, but you're also able to look at track record and see some historical success of it actually working for other people that are similar to you. And then also not going in, with multiple six figures, if that's kind of all the investable capital that you have. You want to kind of slow play it and give yourself the opportunity to, protect yourself. So those are things that, I would look out for.
Right. Okay. Or what sort of?
Yeah. So they say like anywhere from 90 to 95% of traders are not profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that may be listening that have thought about trying it yourself, it's a pretty daunting profession to go into because of the success rate. And so when you have someone who's a part of that top 5 and 10% of traders who are actually profitable, that's where we have a business. That's why we have a business. It's because people not only don't want to learn the years and years that it actually takes to be successful with trading, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that potentially you could lose in trading yourself, but also they just don't have the time to stare at a computer screen all day. And when the reality is, for my clients, what they're looking for is a better work-life balance, right? I mean, 77% of employees have been like burnt out, over their current job. Like the average American works like 400 hours a year more than like people in other countries. And so they're already burnt out for the most part, as far as the clients that I work with, maybe not burnt out, but they are on the verge of a burnout, or they want to prevent it, and they can see kind of, around the corner a little bit, and they realize what I realized when I was in Los Angeles, that something is probably going to have to change here in order for me to hit the goals that I have. So they don't necessarily want to take the time. They don't want to develop the expertise, and they also don't want to waste capital when there's already a system in place where there are people that are able to access these trading teams that typically would only trade for high net worth individuals. But because fortunately I was, in a position to join a mastermind and meet these traders and have a relationship with them, they trade for me personally. And then eventually I was able to give this opportunity, or provide this opportunity to those that meet a specific criteria. So that's a reason why you wouldn't necessarily want to trade yourself. The odds are not exactly in your favor. And also, most of the clients that I work with, their goal is not to replace their current job with another job. It's to, be in a position to where they can spend more time with the people that they care about.
Right. That's a beautiful answer. In fact, it's a very, very relevant answer, because a lot of people are thinking that they are know-it-all, and we can get on with it ourselves, and why not? And we've been masterful in our career. But having said that, in terms of the situation that we are in right now, probably hitting a recession sooner than later, what is your thought regarding that, and what are the trading strategies that perhaps people should have right now in this particular phase?
Yeah, great question. So, the definition of a recession, I guess it's changed over the last, few years, because we've really kind of been in a recession since 2022. Well, what is a recession? Well, it's 2 negative quarters of GDP, of growth, two quarters where you're not growing in your GDP, and that's considered a recession. Well, we've had several of those, in a row, followed by a month of a little bit of growth, and then, several more, a quarter of growth, but several more quarters of no growth. And so we've already pretty much been in a recession, but, the government has not really set it. So what I would say about being in a recession, it's definitely, a good time to become wealthy if you allocate things accordingly, appropriately. You trust the right people. For me personally, back in 2022, actually, that's when I started ATN officially. And fast forward several years later, my net worth has grown, by more than 30x or so. And so I do recognize it as an opportunity to take advantage of things that are, not as oversaturated or not as overexposed right now. And so I feel like real estate is a little bit overexposed. We're still at pretty much the top of the market there. Also, the interest rates are not really inviting, so that's not really great. And then earlier this year, as we've experienced all of these tariffs and all of these executive orders, we've seen the stocks kind of go in and out, people's retirement drastically affected and things of that nature. And so it's just a matter of diversification, right? There's no one size fits all answer and solution for everyone. And that's why ATN is not the one strategy that's going to take over the world or what have you. It just allows for you to have a portfolio and have a sliver of that portfolio of using, ATN's connections and be able to help to boost your overall growth of your portfolio. That's what we look at. Diversification is key. So there's this thing, it's called, I've talked about it before, the modern portfolio theory. And what you want is diversification, right? Now, the only time diversification doesn't really work or help is in a market, when there's a market risk or a systemic risk. And that's kind of what the tariffs are. There's it's a global geopolitical impact, and that does suck. But if you are hedged and you have some uncorrelated assets and things like that, that can be helpful, right? Commodities typically do really well when there's inflation, going on, and there's other things that you want to focus on, buying or acquiring when you're in a recession. Different businesses and different things of that nature can be really profitable if you can buy them on a discounted basis and then be able to operate them in that regard. So overall, you want to have plenty of eggs in different baskets, and you don't just want to be like, all right, I'm going to put my money under a mattress and pray, for the next 30 years and, bet on black. You want to do a mixed approach, and that's going to allow for you to have the proper diversified, hedged, and uncorrelated portfolio that you can have for success.
Right.
And as we progress decade over decade, more and more traders are using algorithms to execute their trades, right? It's more prevalent on Wall Street, as I mentioned, and it's more prevalent in everyday homes of traders themselves. And so the use of algorithms is not going to stop. They're just going to continue to improve in their efficiency. And so it's really just a matter of a race to finding the strongest performing algorithms with the strongest performing teams to manage and tweak those algorithms. The same way as I would use the Ferrari example, where you don't just get a Ferrari and then just drive it with no issues and just never have to take it in for maintenance. No, you're going to consistently, probably even more than a Honda, you're going to need to bring it in to get maintained and optimized and tweaked and adjusted and make sure that things are firing properly, because it's a very powerful machine. The same way with an algorithm. It's a very powerful machine and has the ability to create wealth and also has the ability to take wealth. And so you just want to know that with algorithms, as powerful and as amazing as they can be equally as damaging. So having the right team, having the right individuals helping to maintain its optimism or optimization rather, is going to be the best part. And I don't see it going anywhere. It's just going to get better and better, and there's going to be more and more reliance on algorithmic trading across the board.
Interesting. Very interesting. We're already seeing spurts of that in our day-to-day lives. But obviously, with the way AI is getting into every area possible nowadays.
Yeah, right now it's between 60 and 80% of trading volume overall gets derived from algorithmic trading. But here's the real stat. So institutional traders, so like hedge funds and banks, they use algorithms for, I don't want to make you guess. I would like to hear you guess a number. Let's hear. What do you think? What percentage of institutional traders do you believe trade using algorithms?
Maybe about 35% to 40%.
Double.
Double.
80%.
Uh-huh.
80% of hedge funds and banks use algorithms, whereas it's much lower with retail. It's only between 10 and 20%. So that gap is going to continue to do this, right? And it's going to continue to the retail investors are going to start to realize the power of algorithms and, using them to their advantage. And that's been to our advantage.
Right, absolutely. And I think your background in terms of coming from a pastor's family also plays a big role in the kind of community that you're building. Is that
Yeah.
a fair thing to say? I mean, the
Yeah.
kind of values that you might have inculcated growing up in that kind of a background?
Well, 100%. And I didn't really know this because I was in the children's ministry running around trying to get people to, like just enjoy themselves and not take life too seriously. But, that was kind of my charge. I was a class clown or just somebody who liked to have a good time. But in the actual sanctuary, in the actual church, my dad, my parents were teaching, obviously, of course, the good news, the gospel, and about Jesus and all of those things. But they were also teaching financial literacy. They were also talking about being proper stewards of the capital that God entrusted them with. And so it was actually, church is kind of like a business, right? And, you do need to have money coming in order to sustain the operations. And that's oftentimes with tithes and offering and things of that nature. But with any business, one of the lifelines of a business is LTV, or lifetime value. It's, is each of your people, are they worth $1 or are they worth $2? Are they worth $2 or are they worth $10? Right. And now, obviously, everybody's value, they're not valued based off of how much they earn or how much they give or things of that nature. But just so we're in the right, realm here, it will help everyone the more financially literate an individual actually is. And so, for example, what my parents would also help and counsel on was being the most valuable you can be in the marketplace. So that would be making sure that you were prepared for job interviews or promotions. You had the right attire. So if you needed clothes for an interview, our church provided clothes for interviews with donations and things of that nature. If you needed, training for an interview or career counseling, our church was able to provide that. If you needed help in terms of, I don't have enough money for a true financial advisor, but, could you give some insight into, what my priorities should be? And a priority for the church was always to clear out as much debt as possible, is to limit your expenses as much as possible and increase your income as much as possible. So now you're in a position to where you can put your kids in better schools. You can provide a little bit better. Maybe you can move out of a neighborhood that you don't feel safe in. You can give in the tithe a little bit more because your 10% is more valuable. Those are the type of things that were instilled in the church to not only better the individual, but overall grow God's storehouse. And that was something that over time, as I got older, I, in conversations with my mom, because my dad is not as audible as he once was, she starts to kind of fill me in on some of the reasons why we had such loyal, such a loyal congregation, is because it wasn't just, here's your word and, go off through the week and try to live it out. It was really the work was really done Monday through Saturday with the congregation and taking calls and, coaching and being able to help them to better their lives overall. And so that strength in the community, is something that I've taken into ATN, where it's like, look, like, if I can help you and you can help 5 other people, then the network effect is huge. The impact is huge. And so we have almost 800 clients. And so me and my team and the, traders that we use helping to impact their lives, well, now they can reach other individuals because they've got more bandwidth and they've got more understanding and knowledge of certain subjects. And the last point that I'll put is, we do well with the building wealth aspect. We got the algorithmic trading for that. There's the strategies that we use to help to build the wealth that they've already established through a high income, through, savings and things like that. But the other piece is the preservation of wealth, right? What good is making it all if you can't keep it? And that's why we have professionals in the tax space, in the estate planning space, and being able to provide investment advisors and give them, access to my personal wealth manager. Those are the kind of things that we really value. And the last piece is the, kind of the ability to have the next generation rise up with the same amount of literacy, if not even more. And so being able to provide access to individuals who teach family financial literacy so that everybody has that level of understanding and can use it to their advantage. So 100%, coming from the church background, but specifically the way that my parents ran their church, was really instrumental in me being able to build the community that we built.
I think this episode has become the cusp of luxury blending with spirituality, with your kind of background and the kind of work that you're doing. I'm so happy to interview you. It's just been so impactful listening to you, because it's about not only the pivotal moments that we've talked about from your life, but also about bringing those values from church or from spirituality and then inculcating those in your day-to-day life. Because that's really missing, and probably that is the message that I really want to broadcast through this channel, that it all goes hand in hand. And yes, we have, I guess, served the purpose through this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much for being a guest.
100%. I appreciate the time, and I'm excited to be in front of your audience, and hopefully we'll do this again in the future.
Absolutely. I think we can do some mini episodes in the future.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you so much.